I will find you. You will ask, what will you do when they find me? Don't be scared of yourself.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ashley.
We would like to welcome you to the Work It, You Are Worth It podcast.
We're two friends sit around and talk about healing, growth, and healthy relationships.
Hey Ash. Let's just leave it and run with it.
All right. Hey, Dawn.
Hey, Ashley. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. It's been a great week. How about you?
It has been a very good week. Yes, it has.
Good. What do you want to talk about today? Let's just jump in.
Well, let's talk about the 12 steps, right? That's what brought us together. That's what's brought us to this podcast. Let's talk about 12-step program and what it is and what the 12 steps are and what it's all about.
All right. That sounds like a plan. It's changed my life. I mean, that's the best way to say it. To sum it up for me, it's just changed my entire life.
It has definitely changed my entire life. It has changed my internal habits, and by changing my internal habits, I have changed my life.
I love that because I think that's the thing. It's like you said, the program didn't change my life. I changed my life. I did the work. I think the thing the program does is it gives a guideline. It gives me steps. It gives me an outline to work to be able to find that. But I did the work.
Absolutely. So, well, let's talk about what the program is. I think it's important to say that any and all 12-step programs, from Narcotics Anonymous to Codependence Anonymous to Overeaters Anonymous to Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, all 12-step programs get their foundation and their base from AA, from Bill W.
Yes.
If it was not for Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and the Alcoholics Anonymous big book, we would not have Codependence Anonymous. We would not have any other 12-step program out there at all.
And there are, I know you rattled off just a few. There are 12-step programs for almost everything. Al-Anon, Gamblers Anonymous. There are so many. So definitely check those out. Go out and find a list for our listeners, go find a list. There are 12-step programs out there for everyone. And I think everyone can benefit from a 12-step program.
I agree. I do believe that anyone can benefit from a 12-step program. From, like we said, AA, Narcotics, AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, which is for those who love an alcoholic, Narcotics Anonymous, NA, Marijuana Anonymous, MA, all of the Al-Anons. There's a
Gamblers
list
Anonymous.
If you are dealing with an issue in your life. Right. But if you're dealing with an issue in your life, you please Google that issue and see if there is a 12-step program associated to it. There probably is. There is even a Recovering Couples Anonymous 12-step program. Check into it. Just Google it. It's all out there.
But let's get back to how the 12 steps came about. So it actually came about. Carl Jung was a psychiatrist, and he directed a young man to a religious movement called the Oxford Group, and he suggested that his condition was medically hopeless and only a spiritual experience could help him. And through that religious experience, he overcame his addiction. And then a famous Wall Street banker, Bill W., who anyone in a 12-step program knows Bill W., found his own recovery through this method. And then that's kind of, he was very wealthy, doctors couldn't help him, and he had to figure out a way through a spiritual awakening to make that difference, and it inspired his sobriety. And then
So yeah, for Bill W., it started with Carl Jung and the Oxford Group also. That is like the AA 12-step program original foundation is through that Oxford Group.
Yeah, and then in 1939, the Big Book, AA Big Book, came out, and that book is phenomenal. It's just such a phenomenal book. And then NA came about in 1953 with a gentleman, Jimmy Kay, and it's kind of all history. And then the programs just kind of evolved, and you and I have worked through Codependence Anonymous, and that's how you and I met. And yeah, and so then the rest is kind of history.
Right. So I think as far as 12-step group goes, they are very, very, very similar. Like I said, they are all based off the AA Big Book. And if we actually went through and read the steps, there would be very few words that change in the steps. And the work behind each step, the work that we do when we do each step, the things that change inside us are changing in a different spot. It's changing in a different part of our body and a different part of our brain and our emotion. So it affects a different change, right? So if I work through the steps, the 12 steps of AA, and then I go and work the 12 steps of Al-Anon, and then I come over and I work the 12 steps of ACOA, which is adult children of alcoholics, and dysfunctional families, and then I go and I work the 12 steps of Codependence Anonymous, and then I go and work the 12 steps of Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. I'm going to get different things out of each of those programs as I work these exact same steps. It's very intricately connected and yet extremely different at the same time.
Do you think that I could go to AA and get the same level of recovery that I get in CODA, or vice versa, or CODA and OA?
I think that before I can heal something as deep as a character trait or defect that is a survival habit, like, right, a behavior that is just ingrained, a reaction. Before I can heal a reaction, I have to first heal the addiction. So I think that they are of the exact same level of importance, but I think that what we take out of them is very, very different. An alcoholic must have alcoholism healed and not cured, right? You can't, it doesn't go away ever. None of us, I don't believe that. But it has to be healed and worked through before I can start healing the things that caused the alcoholism, right? I can't, I guess if I'm still drunk, I can't heal my emotional scars.
Right. So I don't have personal experience with AA, NA, those types of addictions. However, I have had experience personally with my eating habits. And I will say I've done both programs. My therapist recommended CODA, and that's the program I started in, and I just had such a love for CODA. I decided, let me try OA. For me, I love the program. The program OA works amazing. But for me, I found such a home in CODA, and my recovery was so comfortable, and I'm putting quotes around comfortable, because this was not comfortable at all. It was so comfortable that I found that through my work in CODA, I was able to also focus on it kind of was like this, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like it was just kind of natural progression into, it changed my eating habits. Because, and we're right, I had that experience with you a few months ago, the whole cereal in the middle of the night. And once I worked through it, I no longer needed cereal in the middle of the night. And I still haven't had cereal in the middle of the night.
Right. I think for, what you're saying, that's absolutely, when we're talking about something that is not a physical danger every single time you do it, you get to the root of that and you work through that from the root up. That could definitely, like what you're talking about, going to CODA, helping to heal the OA, which is Overeaters Anonymous 12-step. And absolutely, I can see how that could help heal that addiction. And I think it's important to, if what we are doing is causing physical damage, such as, like alcohol or drugs that cause your brain to change and your heart rate. And I don't think it's possible to heal that internal wound while still being in that outside wound.
I agree with that. From my understanding and the people that I've worked with, I think there is because you do have to have a clear mind to be able to work the steps.
Yeah, the CODA steps and even the ACOA steps are so intense in looking at myself and taking my own accountability, that if I am not in a healthy place before I start that, addiction wise, like physically, like I don't know, because I was not in a healthy place when I started my steps. And had I been physically addicted to something and having to go through withdrawals and fight that addiction at the same time, I just don't see how I would have ever been able to even begin to look at it.
I think you have to have a clear mind, an open mind, and I feel like a substance that creates that fog in that would get in the way of the recovery. Because if I'm not thinking clearly, if I'm not aware and I'm not open, then I'm just not gonna take anything in. It's just because I can't. That's the whole point of those substances, is to numb and block
Exactly
the extreme emotions that are there. The pain, the fear, it's meant to cover those. And if we're masking those, we can't work on them.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk about the 12 steps.
All right.
So step 1 is we admitted that we are powerless over people, places, and things, and that our life has become unmanageable. That is how I read step 1. Some people read it, we admitted we are powerless over alcohol and that our life has become unmanageable.
We admitted over food.
Yes.
Over sex. Over gambling. Over
whatever. So what does that mean? What is step 1 all about?
I think step 1 is recognizing that and I don't like this word necessarily, but I can't think of a better word. It's recognizing that I'm broken. I'm not in a healthy place, and being able to admit it and know that it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means that my life is out of control.
Right, it's about authenticity, honesty, like truly and honestly looking at me and accepting that I have a problem and I don't know how to make it better.
But it's not bad-mouthing me. It's not belittling me. It's not meaning that I'm not good enough or I'm bad or anything like that. It just means that my life has become unmanageable. It's a mess. It's being honest, like you said, being honest about that and accepting that there's a problem.
And I think a big part of step 1 is accepting that I have no control.
Yeah.
I have no control over alcohol, drugs, people, places, things. I am not in control.
So let me ask you this. What happens, do you feel like this step, I have to realize that I'm not in control the very first time that I look at this step?
I mean, I think this step works over and over in my life all the time. Yes, I have to realize I'm not in control, but I think by the time most people get to this, they already know they're not in control.
Do you find, and this goes for all the steps, but have you ever ran into a situation, I know I have, where I will get to step 8 or 9 and then something new will come in my life and it's like, ah, shit, this is completely unmanageable. I'll spiral and I have to reconnect with that. This is an unmanageable situation. I'm feeling out of control, with quotes around it, and I have to check back into step 1.
I do. I think that's a big difference between dysfunctional recovery versus addiction recovery. What we're doing currently is recovering from dysfunctional patterns, dysfunctional behaviors, dysfunctional lives. I am addicted to helping other people, fixing other places, and focusing on other things. It's a habit. I do it without even knowing that I'm doing it. And if I don't accept that I'm doing that, then there's absolutely no way to move forward with any other step or to get better, right? If I can't even see that I'm doing it, there's no way to change it.
So how do you go about realizing the areas that are unmanageable in your life? How do you look at them?
It's different now than it was.
So let's go to somebody that has never worked a step ever.
I wouldn't look at every separate area of my life to try to find manageability if I have never worked the steps. I would just look at life as a whole, in general. It was, for me, when I was starting step 1, I couldn't focus on this relationship or this relationship or that relationship because every single one of them were awful. I was failing at every one of my relationships when I started this. So to look at each one separately, for me, was far too overwhelming. I had to acknowledge that my life in general had reached a level of unmanageability that I didn't know what to do with.
So mine was a little different. So when I started the steps, I came because of a relationship, thinking that was what was unmanageable in my life. It was just this relationship. So that was going to be my focus. But then once I got to the program, I realized I still went with I'm, going to fix myself for this relationship. And then what I realized as I went, was working the steps was, oh, shit, my life is unmanageable in a lot of different aspects and multiple relationships. And I think it could go either way, right? We were two very different people. We have had different experiences with recovery, but it's very similar. But we both kind of went about coming into it very differently and had different thoughts.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that we share that too, right? Like, yes, when I came to recovery, I did it for my relationship with Nick. He was going into rehab, and his rehab guy suggested I look into Coda because I said, I'm terrified I'm going to do wrong and I'm going to make him relapse. And so he suggested I look into Coda. So when I came, yes, I came for that relationship to try to fix it and make it better. And when I began working the steps, it was like, I don't know, it was like I couldn't look at everything. I couldn't focus solely on that relationship or solely on this. It just hurt way too much to focus on one specific relationship. I knew my entire life was just not where I needed it to be. And I really, the very first time I worked these steps, I just did a very generalized, my life is unmanageable.
Let's jump into steps 2 and 3. And I want to come back to what you just said about why the first few steps are the way they are. So step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Yeah, I mean, you have to accept that there's a higher power out there somewhere that's bigger than you.
This is the birth of faith. This is where my faith began. This is this step was like finding the new bloom that, oh, I didn't know that was way in the, like when you go and you look in a garden and you have let's say a tomato plant, but way inside is this itty bitty bud.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't even know you were there. Look how beautiful it is. And that's really kind of how this step was for me. I was not good with God. I did not trust God, and I was angry at God, and I spent a long time pushing God away. But when I completed my second step, it was really like you just said, like, oh, I didn't know you were there. You're so beautiful. You've been there my whole life. Really? Just for me? And it wasn't God.
Me either.
My higher power was not God. But boy, did my higher power have my back, though. Right? Like, it was amazing. It just, the sense of faith, and I still have it. Like, when I talk about my higher power, the overwhelming amount of faith that pours into my heart where there never used to be. It really is life-changing in and of itself.
I'm sitting here, and it was funny that you just, it's not funny that you said that, but it is, my heart aches because I feel my higher power in my heart. It just, because it's so full. And I've got goosebumps literally from head to toe just talking about that birth of that. God, it's so beautiful. It's so.
So I just have to say what just popped in my head. Letting go of the outcome. Step 2 and the faith in my higher power, in a power greater than myself, allows me to let go of the outcome.
But not every time. Let's be real. Early in recovery, was I great at this? Nah. I had to learn. I had to be patient with myself. I didn't just default to every time. Like now it's like, oh, that's HP. Oh, that's HP. Like I can throw it to HP all day long because I believe it and I feel it and I live it. But working step 2 for the first time, that took a long time for me to even, I would have to I would have consciously think that there is a power greater than me.
Do. I mean, still do, like right up to yesterday, right up to, I mean, I haven't had to remind myself yet today, thankfully. But I still do. To this day, I have worked the 12 steps. I mean, so it depends on how you look at it. I have actually worked through steps 1 through 12 3 times at this point. I am working through them a 4th time. And 10, 11, and 12 are kind of repetitions. We'll talk about that further. But I work them every single day, multiple times a day, for 2.5 years. And I still struggle with having faith that a power greater than myself has got my back and will take care of me.
I'm very aware of the irony about situations happening. So my higher power does not play because he knows that I could easily slip back into old patterns. I have to fight very hard to not slip back into old patterns. It gets easier. I'm not going to say that. But my higher power will he's like, okay, Dawn, we're just not going to let you forget. I'm going to, right? Okay, here we go. This is what you need. This is what you hear. It's such a, I always say my higher power is up there playing a chess game and just laughing at me because you just thought. And
I think
he reminds me, but that's my awareness.
I think that leads perfectly into, right? He reminds you that he's there, restores that sense of faith. And then step 3 is that we made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood him.
Now this was a new freedom. This step, a new freedom. Because it wasn't about God. It was turning my life over to God as I understood God. And that was a new freedom for me because I didn't have to look at God, put God in a box of what society and what history has told us God is. And that gave me a new freedom. That kept me moving in these steps. If they would have said you had to put your care into God and that was it, I'd have been out.
I definitely would have been out at that moment too.
It took me the longest time to even read God. Like when I would, reading the first few steps, they will talk, obviously those 2 steps, 2 and 3 are very big on our higher power and and finding a power greater than ourselves. And so there's a lot of communication and words, God is used repetitive in that. I used to cringe when I would see that. And I still enjoy, like in my mind now, I have to flip it to higher power. I just automatically read it as higher power. I can read it as God. I don't cringe. But in the beginning, that was a hard word for me to read.
In step 2, we accept God. We accept our higher power. We come to understand our higher power. We have faith in our higher power. Before I completed step 2, I struggled with God and the word God and reading the word God. And when people would send me Bible quotes, I immediately assigned God to my Catholic upbringing, the Catholic school I went to, the Christian Baptist churches that I went to. For me, that didn't work. So when I completed step 2, in my mind, there was this shift where I understood that it did not matter what anybody else meant when they said the word God. I don't know why I was able to do this with the word God, but not with so many other things. But with the word God, with step 2, it was just this shift. It does not matter who they talk about when they say God. There's a filter over my ears where their God, as soon as the word hits my ears, it gets transmuted into my higher power, my God, my loving, caring, compassionate God.
That doesn't mean what you're saying, my loving, caring, compassionate God. That doesn't mean you're saying that my God, which might look different than yours, is not loving and caring. It just means your God is loving and caring for you.
Yes, to me, what it means, my God appears however the person that he loves needs him to appear. So maybe that's a doorknob. Maybe that's a unicorn. Maybe that's a witch. Maybe that's a spirit in heaven. Maybe that's an angel. I don't care what that is in your mind, in someone else's mind, or in my mind. My higher power appears to me how I need it to appear to me, in a way that I can understand, and my higher power loves everyone else enough to appear to them in whatever way they need it to. That's what I believe.
Me too. So mine started out my higher power because I just did not have a relationship with God in the traditional form. And to me, growing up, God was a very judgmental God. And so that didn't fit well for me. Because, and it's funny because logically, growing up, I would be like, wait, you're telling me that God is all loving, but yet you're telling me he judges me for being one way or the other or different, or that it just did not logically make sense for me. So I was like, that doesn't work for me. So what my therapist asked me when I was seeing her, and she is a recovering codependent, she's been through coda recovering. She was like, where do you find that peace, that level of peace where your body just, and it's a tranquil feeling. And for me, it was the beach. That was the first place I could go. I could shut my eyes and I could transport myself there wherever I'm at. I can be sitting in middle of Tampa traffic and I could transport myself there. And my body would relax, and it would find peace, and it would be open to what I needed to hear and see and experience. And that's really what it means when it comes to a higher power, is when can I open who I am and trust and be willing to hear what I need to hear. And that's, for me, that was the beach in the beginning. That evolved. It's not the beach anymore. It is. It's still the beach. The beach is still a place I can find peace in. But now it's something bigger than me, and it doesn't fit in a box anymore. It's not definable.
That's it. Undefinable. I cannot give you a definition of my higher power. I can give you my higher power's character traits. But if you ask me what my higher power looks like, my brain does not have the capacity to understand nor describe what my higher power is.
Because it's a feeling.
So that kind of leads us into step 3, right? Which is the act of making a decision to follow our higher power, to give the outcome to our higher power and let go of that self-will, what we want the outcome to be.
Basically, letting God be in charge of our lives.
I mean, that sounds so simple. Right? Like,
Doesn't it?
it,
What? It's so hard.
it is so difficult every day to just live life on life's terms. Allow people to do what they want and accept them for who they are. I have been on this mission to get rid of my anger. I have associated, first off, anger is a secondary fear, right? We all know anger is not the original foundational emotion. Anger is a secondary emotion, not fear, sorry. Anger is a secondary emotion. Typically, that first emotion is fear. I cannot be vulnerable if I am angry. And anger equals control. When I am angry, I am attempting to control something. Therefore, I am not in step 3, which is surrender and giving to higher power if I am in anger. So I'm attempting to not go into anger, and not by like shutting it down or not allowing myself to feel it, but by examining it when I begin to feel it, right? Instead of simply yelling and screaming, and I say very strongly, I am attempting. It is not, I have not yet been successful to not allow anger in. It has creeped in, but I'm getting much better. Anyways, I'm attempting to examine it, to genuinely surrender to, why am I angry? What am I trying to control? What am I afraid of? And how can I let go of that fear? How can I let go of that outcome that I am afraid of, and therefore surrender to my higher power?
So what I'm getting from these first 3 steps is the ultimate goal is to find peace with God.
Yeah, to find a spiritual path where I can believe that there is something bigger than all of us guiding this.
And we're going to get more into this. I mean, obviously, once we get to step 11, it's, maintaining this and what that looks like and how we do that. But I think the beginning first 3 steps are really just finding it and knowing it's there and it's available, and it's being able to trust and finding the honesty, the faith, and surrender.
Yeah, just admitting that life is an experience and I can't control it.
Just giving up. I mean, not giving up, but just like, okay, I'm winging this shit every day.
Doing the best I can in the moment. There's all those little things.
Yeah, best I can with what I got at this moment. Oh my gosh.
Live life on life's terms. Go with the flow. So that kind of brings us to step 4. Step 4 is made a searching and furious moral inventory of ourselves.
Yeah, step 4. Oh, step 4.
I love step 4 now.
I do too. But the steps 1, 2, and 3 are pretty. They're so pretty. It's like,
for me, steps 1, 2, and 3 were really, really hard.
yes.
Because it was putting my faith in something outside of myself. And I spent years of my life teaching myself not to rely on anybody but myself. Right? I spent my entire life shutting everyone else out, including my higher power, or any higher power, anything and everything. I shut it all out. So for me, putting my faith in something outside of myself was extraordinarily difficult. And looking at myself while painful in the moment, taking a fearless and searching moral inventory, while painful in the moment and a wake-up call, it was much easier for me than putting my faith in something outside of me.
I'm not saying steps 1 through 3 are not hard, because they are. They are very, very hard, but they are pretty. The outcome is pretty.
Yes, they are pretty. At the end of each step, there is something positive that you feel, and it is pretty, yes.
Step 4, not pretty.
It's dirty.
Oh God, it's so dirty. I love to use this analogy. Have you ever, I'm sure you have, moved, and you've had to do all the packing, all the moving, and up and down stairs, in the truck, out of the truck. You think your house is as clean as it can be, and you realize how dirty it really is because you've got all that dust and the dirt and the nasty, and you're sweaty, and right, think about how gross you are at the end of the day. And then you get in the shower, and you stand under that hot water, and the water runs over you, and it just is like, that's step 4.
So I compare step 4. It's a little different. So, right, I don't do 4 by itself. I do 4, 5, 6 because
I do 4 and 5. I agree with 4 and 5.
Right.
Right.
I just think so step 4 by itself, my analogy for step 4 is you walk into your bathroom and your child just gave your dog a mud bath. Okay, so you walk into your bathroom and your bathtub is covered in gross dirt, dried on mud, muck, nasty. Step 4 is the process of cleaning that bathtub. We fill it with clean water, we scrub the sides, and now we've got this gross, dirty, disgusting water. Step 5 is the act of draining that water. And step 6 is the act of rinsing that tub.
It's really funny that we both use the analogy of water and cleaning and cleaning.
Yes. Water is cleansing.
Because it is, but that's what it is. It's like, I think you do have to, it's so ugly. It's so gross. It's so hard. Step 4 is hard.
But it's only hard, and I think this is so important to say because everyone is so terrified of step 4. Everyone I've ever spoken to, everyone I've sponsored, even when I did it, and when I first came to step 4, I was so terrified. Everyone is terrified of step 4. The reason it is so hard is because it creates an awareness within us about ourselves.
So I remember thinking in step 4 when I first started it, or when I was, was working it and was in it, I realized this was a thought. It was like, God, I'm a shitty person. God, how much of a shitty person have I been? But it's not about being a shitty person, right? That's not what it was about. It was about I needed to realize my own.
If I can't see that I am a shitty person, I will forever be a shitty person.
Right?
Step 4 creates awareness about the things that I have been doing my whole life without ever even thinking about doing them. Like when I did step 4, I remember looking back on it and actually going, damn, I thought I was helping. I genuinely thought that I was doing the quote unquote right thing. I was helping. I was being kind. I was being generous. I was giving my all. And then I was doing my step 4 and I was looking back at the situation with this new perspective. And it was just heartbreaking and yet empowering to be able to see how what I thought was one way really and genuinely actually was another. But had I not seen it, I wouldn't be able to change it. So thank God I saw it, because now I can do something about it, and I don't have to keep being that same person that I was being when I thought I was being somebody else.
You know what I like, what I love about, not like, but I love about step 4 is because once you're through step 4, I made more sense. Everything I had done for the last, in my case, it was 48 years, 47, whatever it was.
Yes.
It made sense. Like, oh, that's why I did that. Oh, okay, that's why I did that. Oh, okay, I see why I did that. But then once I knew it, like you said, that awareness, I could change it.
Yeah, I finally understood myself, for sure.
Yep. This is all about self-examination. Step 4 is self-examination. That's not beating ourselves up. Like I said, I felt like a shitty person, but that didn't mean I was a shitty person. It's just like, oh, God, wow, didn't realize. All right, well, now I know it. Now I have something to work with.
And that's why, in my opinion, step 5, very, very, very closely following and almost running
Parallel.
almost running intermingled with,
Yeah.
right? Almost like as my sponsees are doing their step 4, we are doing a step 5 together throughout that process, because they are so important, so that they don't get caught up in, so that I don't get caught up in that cycle of, look how shitty I was.
The reason step 4 and 5 go together is because I'm doing and you're, like you said, your sponsees are coming to you to share the inventory that they've done, and they're admitting it. They're admitting it to another person. They're admitting it to you. They're admitting it to me. At the same time, just because they admitted it to me, they get up, the point is, get off the phone, and then you're supposed to have to admit it to God, right? Have a conversation with God. This is what I'm doing. Help me understand this better. And that's why I agree with you. 4 and 5 are so intermingled. They should kind of just happen at the same time.
It's important to not sit in that dirty bathtub, right? I mean, if I fill my bathtub with water and I scrub the walls and then I walk away and I just leave it sitting, it's just going to get dirty again. Even if I drain it and then just leave it sitting, it's all that dirt is still just going to be there. There's no point in putting ourselves through the work of a step 4, 5, step 4 and step 5 if we are not going to follow through with it, because it just leaves us left feeling dirty and gritty.
Using my scenario, right? All that work, get in the shower, let the water run over you, and then you get out. Well, you're not clean. You haven't used soap.
Right.
Gotta use soap. Gotta use soap.
I think step 5 is about integrity, right? It's about owning up to, this is who I have been, and these are the things that I have done that I no longer want to do, or that I want to continue to do. It is about being who I am on the inside in my life on the outside.
Does that mean that we will always not do those things ever again?
Not at all. Nobody's perfect, right? What we're talking about is recovery from survival behaviors. Even addiction is a survival behavior. The 12 steps don't talk about making you a perfect person. They don't talk about making life easier for us. Life doesn't change. Life is still life. And the things that we are talking about here are deeply ingrained survival behaviors. They are things that we have done in our lives without ever even thinking about them, without realizing what it is we were doing. Sometimes those old habits die hard, right? Sometimes they die and they're gone for 6, 7, 8 years, and then all of a sudden they got to creep up again just to see if you're still paying attention. It doesn't go away forever. This is not an end-all be-all. This is a way of life.
I think that's, for me, one of those things that I tell all my sponsees about, like, early on. I do an interview call every time before I decide whether I'm taking somebody on or not, because if I don't and the boundaries are not set in place before we get started, it might not go well for either one of us. But that's one of the things, this is a lifetime program. I do, and I know you know this, I do CODA 5 nights a week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I am doing something related to CODA. Not my own personal work, because that happens all the time. Right? That happens every day. But I have to stay extremely active in this, because if I don't, it's a slippery slope, and I could easily make it, if I miss this meeting this week, it'll be fine. Oh, if I miss the next meeting, it'll be fine. And before I know it, then I'm not going back. And for me, this is a way of life. So the few and far between meetings that I know you don't miss meetings, I don't miss meetings. It's got to be something pretty important. And I do that because this is a lifetime program, and I need to keep this first and foremost in my life, because it's given me my life. And so I'm not giving my life back freely.
Yeah, I'm definitely never going back to what I was.
It's too easy. Once you get through the steps, it's just too easy to not go back. If you just keep doing the steps, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, it's easy to slip, right? Like you said, it's a slippery slope, and it's very easy to lose my footing. However, at this point, I have so many tools in my bag that when I lose my footing, I'm immediately reaching for the next tool to regain my footing so that I don't fall all the way down that slope. And I cannot imagine the level of awareness I would have as I was sliding down that slippery slope if I were to.
After steps 4 and 5, we should, we're going into step 6. And step 6 is we are entirely ready to have God remove all those defects of character. So what does that mean?
So for me, this is a couple of things, right? So step 4 is when I become aware of these defects. Step 5 is when I tell somebody else and myself and God about these defects. And then step 6 is like, I accept that I have had these defects forever, and I am now ready to let go of them. For me, when it came to letting go of some of my character defects, such as control, it was terrifying. I became controlling. I became controlling around 11, maybe 12. I realized how if I can control the people around me and my environment, then I felt safe. And in my child mind, that was set in stone. And I did that for 38 years, 39 years. I was a controlling SOB. It was crazy how controlling I was. And I did not think I was controlling. Had you told me I was controlling, I would have argued with you until you agreed with me that I was not controlling. But step 6 for me it was about accepting not only that, yes, I was controlling, but it was also about accepting that being controlling did not keep me safe. That was a false belief. That was a child's mind tying something together that did not tie together. For me, becoming ready to have God remove these defects of character was all about truly accepting what they were and that they did not work.
So I think it's we've talked about this, control. For me, control was a huge defect of character that I had to work through. I, on the other hand, with control, wore it with a badge of honor. Oh, I'm in control. I'm in control. People would tell me, "Oh, you're controlling," and I would be like, "I know, thank you. I know." I was like, it was my armor. Like you said, it kept me safe. But instead of arguing with about no, I'd be like, yeah, I am. Because it was a mask that I was wearing to not let people see that I felt like such a fraud. And I had to work through that. I had to work through that. I can take off my armor and I might not be good at something. But that's okay, because it doesn't mean that's my character. My character is a wonderful, loving, honest character. That's me. It's just I had these defects that I covered to protect me, because that's what I was taught as a kid. It's what I had to do as a kid. I didn't have a choice. I didn't know any other way. Nobody taught me that I was okay.
Yeah, that was the other thing that was really, really hard for me to accept, was that simply breathing made me good enough. I didn't need to be better. I didn't need to prove I was good enough. I deserved every single thing my heart yearned for, simply because I breathed.
So we talked about control being one of the character defects. What are some of the other ones?
Oh man, the list goes on and on. Another good one for me was avoidance.
Denial. We have self-esteem. My self-esteem was horrible.
I was judgmental as hell. I was so crazy judgmental because I was so hard on myself. What is the other one? The chameleon aspect? Compliance.
I would just, yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like I would transform into what everybody else thought I should be. I was so opinionated. And this is what's so, it sounds so like such an oxymoron, because I'm sitting here saying I was so compliant, but I can say that I was so confident. I was so, if I knew, I was right and I was always right.
And I was adamant. If I was right, you were damn wrong.
Oh, yes. I used to say that too. I'd be like, oh, if I'm right, I'm going to fight till the death to prove I'm right. And I would.
Oh, yeah, I used to say that too. If I knew I was right, there was absolutely no other option except for whoever I was talking to be wrong. Period. End of story. And they needed to acknowledge that they were wrong, or they were just even wronger.
Yep. And I was going to beat them down. Not in a mean way. It's not that, but I would be just until they almost were they would give up.
Like you totally lacked empathy for them. Yeah. That's another one of those codependent characteristics, is lacking empathy. Mm-hmm. even though I felt like I was the most empathetic person in the world. It's really crazy how, like, and I remember thinking this when I first became aware of all of these character defects. In the moment when I was living in this, going through these specific situations, I really genuinely believed what I was trying to do was for the other person's best interests. It was for them. I was all about them. It had to be empathy because it was all about what was best for them. I didn't realize in that moment just how self-centered that was.
I think one of the things that I personally had to accept was I really was, in my heart, doing what was best, I thought was best for everybody else. I really did. But what I realized, what the recovery gave me and working the steps gave me, was the understanding that by my actions and what I was doing and saying was true manipulation.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. Coda gave me the ability to see that for sure. 12 Steps did.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I was trying to do the best I could for other people. I was really thinking of other people. The problem is I was doing it with what I knew then.
Right. The problem is that my thinker was designed in the mind of a child who was going through some shit and her wires got all jumbled up and they started reacting really intensely in one way and not intense enough in another, and then really, really intense over here, and those wires just stayed that way forever. So while I thought I was doing the best and I thought I was doing what was right, the wires that connected those things were just crisscrossed and they were all intertwined and all tangled up.
And that's what we're doing here in these steps 4 and 5 and 6 is unwinding those wires and straightening them out.
And then accepting that they were there and that they were wrong not wrong, but different, right? They weren't the way that we wanted them to be.
Yeah. And then we just have to humbly ask our higher power to remove them. And this...
Yeah.
And it's the purest form of transformation from our character, is saying to a power greater than us that I am aware of this and I need help to remove them.
And that, yeah, there is absolutely nothing more empowering than to humbly ask a power greater than yourself to take away things that I don't like about me. It just, I don't, like, there's such an acceptance and a connection that comes with that.
It made me realize that I'm okay. I've done these patterns, and because I think that's what, when I'm asking higher power to remove them, I'm not asking him to remove them because I hated them, or that I don't like myself, or...
Right, no, step 7 or step 6 is acceptance.
Right. It's, okay, I did these things. Humbly ask my higher power to remove them. I did these things. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I can see how these character defects have harmed others and have harmed myself. And at
And
this,
that's, oh, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
that's okay. I was just going to say, and that's the key to these 4 steps. This grouping of steps is finding peace with me, finding peace with myself.
That is the key. That's exactly word for word, almost. I was going to say that's the key to these steps is that final step of, right, go back to that dirty bathtub analogy, and at this point you've rinsed it with the clean water and now it's bright and shiny in that towel dry step, and now it's just sparkling. And it is just this finished, beautiful blank canvas to just enjoy. Step 7 is just this, I don't know how to describe it. It's like this miraculous wave of faith in something bigger than me and humility with understanding that I'm worth it. I don't know how else to describe. Like, all of that to me feels like an oxymoron when I say it, right?
It does, doesn't
But
it? It's crazy.
It really does. But it's like this, like, I have the power. I am a very worthwhile, powerful, amazing, beautiful soul. And I screw up and I make mistakes, and there's a power even bigger than me and even greater than me that knows a hell of a lot more than me that I have faith in. And that is just the culmination of these 4 steps. They're not easy, but man, it's so worth it. It's so worth it at the end.
Did you find that just because we were working steps 4 through 7 and you got through step 7, that your peace with God, steps 1, 2, and 3, deepened even more as you become more aware of yourself?
Oh, absolutely. So, right, for me, step 7, asking a higher power, becoming willing, step 6, becoming willing to ask a higher power, and then asking him to remove these shortcomings. At first, it felt like this, you mean I'm supposed to ask this being that gave me these shortcomings to please take them away? Why would I do that? Like at first, it kind of felt like that to me. And then as I worked the steps, so when I say at first, I mean, right, the first couple of weeks in Coda, when I heard people talk about this before I actually worked the steps, it felt like that to me. Like, why would I ask this? Why would I ask him to take them away when he's the one that gave them to me? Like, he put them there. Why is he going to take them away? Like, it just didn't feel right. But then when I did these steps in order this way, by the time I completed step 7, it felt like I trusted. I did not renew my relationship with God. I built an entirely new relationship with my God. And that relationship became concreted in stone with the act of completing step 7.
I want to definitely keep talking about the steps, Ashley, but I would love for us to break this up into another session, another episode, talking about the remaining steps, because this is a lot. It's a lot to talk about these steps and to get through all of this. But there's something I wanted to read, and I would have read it earlier if I would have seen it, but I did not see it until now. There's probably a reason. So I'm reading, AA Cleveland has a website, and so I'm reading it from here. With the help of a power greater than ourselves, the steps can be a tool to relieve our suffering, fill our emptiness, and help us extend God's presence in our lives. This releases energy, love, and joy that are new to us. It is a program we follow at our own pace, in our own way. We walk this journey one step at a time with our higher power's help and the support of others in the program. all we need is an open mind.
I love that.
I do too.
I think that's a great place to leave this until next week.
That sounds great. Just we'll recap and get into the remaining steps. Thank you for having this conversation with me, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about having conversations with someone in a similar program is we learn if we're open, and we can learn more and more about our recovery through our conversation with others. And so I appreciate your having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Dawn. Me too. It's crazy that when we started recording this, we weren't sure what we were going to talk about, and here we are. Look how great it was.
I know, right? And we have to split it into two, but that's okay.
What an awesome week. Thank you so much.
you.
I agree. An amazing conversation. Listeners, please jump in. Feel free. Email, call, text, chat, however you get a hold of us, please do.
Share your recovery stories. We would love to hear those as well. What was your experience working the first 7 steps? What did it look like to find your peace with God, to find the peace with yourself?
All right. Everyone have a wonderful week. Bye.
Bye.
We would like to thank you for joining us on this journey of self-discovery. Visit the Work It website at workityouareworthit.com to submit your questions and topics for future episodes. And remember, work it because you are worth it.